Elias froze, his breath catching as Noah's hand grazed his. The gym's fluorescent lights humming above like a distant storm. He'd been spotting Noah's bench press, counting reps, when Noah's body shifted, pressing against him for a fleeting second. A spark that burned through years of denial. In that moment, Elias knew he couldn't keep running from the truth pulsing in his chest. Seattle's Pulse Fitness was a haven for misfits. A 24-hour gym tucked in a corner of Capitol Hill where neon signs flickered and the air smelled of sweat and ambition. Elias, 28, a graphic designer with a knack for sketching dreams he never dared chase, had been coming here for years. He was lean, with deep brown skin and eyes that held stories he rarely shared. Noah, 29, was newer. A construction worker with a warm laugh and a body carved from discipline, his Latino heritage evident in the rhythm of his speech. They'd met 3 months ago when Noah asked Elias to spot him, a casual request that spiraled into late-night talks and shared protein shakes. Tonight, the gym was nearly empty, save for a few night owls clanging weights. Elias stood behind the bench, hands hovering over the barbell as Noah pushed through his set. 3 more, Elias coached, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. Noah's muscles strained, his tank top clinging to his chest, and Elias tried not to notice the way his pulse quickened. He'd spent years building walls, around his heart, his identity. Growing up in a small Georgia town where being black and questioning your sexuality meant silence or survival. Seattle was supposed to be freedom, but freedom felt like a lie when he couldn't admit who he was. Noah racked the bar with a grunt, sitting up, his hazel eyes catching Elias's. "You good, man?" he asked, wiping sweat from his brow. There was a weight to the question, like Noah saw through the cracks in Elias's armor. Elias nodded, forcing a smile, but his hands trembled as he adjusted the weights. He wasn't good. He was drowning in a truth he'd buried since high school, when whispered crushes were met with fists and slurs. Noah, with his easy grin and quiet strength, was unraveling him. Their friendship had grown fast, too fast. Coffee runs turned into hikes in the Cascades, then dinners at Noah's tiny apartment in Fremont. Elias loved the way Noah talked about his family, his mom's tamales, his sister's dreams of med school, open and unashamed. But every laugh, every brush of shoulders, felt like a dare Elias wasn't ready to take. He dated women, played the part, but the spark was never there. With Noah, it was a wildfire. "Wanna grab a drink after?" Noah asked, standing close enough that Elias could smell his cedarwood cologne. The question was innocent, but it landed like a confession. Elias hesitated, his mind screaming to say no, to retreat to the safety of solitude. But his heart, traitorous and loud, pushed out a quiet, "Sure." They ended up at the Lookout, a bar nestled in Capitol Hill's vibrant chaos. Rainbow flags lined the street, and the air buzzed with laughter and music. Elias sipped his IPA, watching Noah animatedly recount a story about a chaotic construction site. The bar's dim lights cast shadows on Noah's face, highlighting the curve of his jaw, and Elias's chest tightened. He wanted to reach out, to close the distance, but fear was a vice around his throat. "You ever feel like you're hiding something?" Noah asked suddenly, his voice soft but piercing. Elias froze, the question slicing through his defenses. He wanted to lie, to deflect, but Noah's eyes held him captive. "All the time," Elias admitted, barely a whisper. Noah leaned closer, their knees brushing under the table, and Elias felt the world tilt. The walk home was quiet, the Seattle night cool and damp. They stopped at a park near Noah's place, cherry blossoms falling like soft promises. Noah turned to Elias, his expression raw. "I see you, Elias," he said, voice low. "You don't have to hide with me." Elias's breath hitched, and when Noah's hand brushed his, he didn't pull away. For the first time, he let himself feel the weight of his own heart. The park was a cocoon of silence, broken only by the rustle of cherry blossoms underfoot. Elias stood rooted, Noah's words echoing in his mind. "You don't have to hide with me." His heart pounded, a drumbeat urging him to step forward. But fear clawed at his resolve, whispering memories of rejection and shame. Elias had grown up in a world where love was a narrow path. His father, a pastor, preached fire and brimstone, his sermons laced with warnings about sin. Elias learned early to bury his feelings, to smile through the confusion of stolen glances at boys in the locker room. Moving to Seattle at 22 was his escape. But even here, he carried the weight of those sermons, the fear that love could cost him everything. Noah, though, was different. He was open, unguarded, sharing stories of his own struggles, coming out to his traditional family, losing friends who couldn't accept him. It hurt, Noah had told Elias once over late-night tacos, but I'd rather be alone than live a lie. Those words haunted Elias now, as they stood under the cherry trees, the air thick with possibility. "I don't know how to do this," Elias said finally, his voice cracking. Noah's hand was still close, warm and steady. "Do what?" Noah asked, though his eyes suggested he already knew. Elias swallowed, the truth clawing its way out. "Be me, the real me." He looked away, the vulnerability searing. Noah stepped closer, his presence a quiet anchor. "You don't have to have it all figured out," he said. "Just take one step." That night, Elias couldn't sleep. His Capitol Hill apartment, cluttered with sketchbooks and half-finished designs, felt too small for the storm inside him. He pulled out a sketch pad, his hands moving instinctively, drawing Noah's face. The curve of his smile, the intensity of his gaze. The act was a confession, each stroke a piece of himself laid bare. By dawn, he'd filled pages, and for the first time he didn't tear them up. The next week at the gym, Elias felt raw, exposed. Noah acted normal, spotting Elias's squats with the same easy banter, but every glance felt charged. Elias caught himself watching Noah's hands, the way they gripped the barbell, and his mind wandered to the park, to that almost touch. He was falling, and it terrified him. On Friday, Noah invited Elias to a community event at a local queer center, a fundraiser with live music and art. Elias hesitated, the word queer still sharp in his mind, tied to years of whispered insults. But Noah's enthusiasm was infectious, and Elias found himself saying yes, drawn to the light in Noah's eyes. The center was alive with color. Murals on the walls, people of every age and background laughing and dancing. Elias felt out of place, his button-up shirt too stiff among the vibrant crowd. Noah, in a fitted tee and jeans, moved with ease, introducing Elias to friends. One, a trans woman named Maya, hugged Elias like they'd known each other forever. "Noah talks about you non-stop," she teased, and Elias's face burned. As the night wore on, a band played soulful covers, and Noah pulled Elias onto the dance floor. Elias protested. He didn't dance. But Noah's grin was relentless. "Just follow me," he said, his hands guiding Elias's hips. The music wrapped around them, and for a moment, Elias forgot his fear. Their bodies moved together, close and unhurried. And when Noah's forehead rested against his, Elias felt a warmth he'd never known. But the moment shattered when Elias's phone buzzed. A text from his sister, Amara, back in Georgia. "Dad's asking why you never call. He's worried." Guilt crashed over Elias, pulling him back to the world he'd fled. He stepped back, mumbling an excuse, and slipped outside. The cool air stung his lungs as he leaned against a wall, the weight of his double life crushing him. Noah found him minutes later, concern etched on his face. "You okay?" he asked. Elias wanted to say yes, to keep pretending, but the words wouldn't come. "I don't know if I can do this," he said instead, his voice barely audible. Noah's expression softened, but there was a flicker of hurt in his eyes. "You don't have to," he said quietly. "But I'm here when you're ready." He walked back inside, leaving Elias alone with the night and his fears. Elias spent the next week avoiding the gym, his mind a battlefield of desire and dread. Noah's words, "I'm here when you're ready," echoed in his dreams, but so did his father's voice, warning of a world that wouldn't forgive. He buried himself in work, designing logos for a local startup, but every sketch turned into Noah's silhouette. Amara called on Wednesday, her voice bright but probing. "You sound off, Eli," she said. "What's going on?" Elias wanted to tell her everything. About Noah, about the ache in his chest, but the words stuck. Amara was the only one in his family who might understand, but even she was tethered to their father's world. "Just work stress," he lied, hating the distance growing between them. On Saturday, Elias found himself at Pike Place Market, drawn to the chaos of vendors and tourists. He wandered past stalls of flowers and fish, the salty air grounding him. Then he saw Noah, helping at a fruit stand, his laugh carrying over the crowd. Elias's heart lurched. He almost turned away, but Noah spotted him, waving him over with that disarming grin. "Missed you at the gym," Noah said, handing Elias a peach. Their fingers brushed, and Elias felt the familiar spark. They walked together, sharing the peach juice dripping down their chins. Noah talked about his week, a new project at work, a fight with his sister, but Elias heard the unspoken question. "Why did you pull away?" They ended up on a bench overlooking Puget Sound, the water shimmering under the afternoon sun. Elias's resolve crumbled. "I'm scared," he admitted, staring at the horizon. "I wasn't raised to be like this." Noah listened, his silence a safe harbor. "My family, they wouldn't understand. I don't even know if I do." Noah's hand rested on the bench, inches from Elias's. "I get it," he said. "When I came out, my dad didn't speak to me for a year. But hiding who I am, it was killing me." He paused, his voice softening. "You're not alone, Elias. You don't have to go through this alone." The words broke something in Elias. He reached for Noah's hand, tentative, and when Noah laced their fingers together, Elias felt like he could breathe for the first time in years. They sat there, hands clasped, watching fairies glide across the sound. It wasn't a solution, but it was a start. Back at the gym, their routine resumed, but it was different now. Every touch, every glance carried weight. Elias pushed himself harder, lifting heavier, as if he could outrun his doubts. Noah was patient, never pushing, but his presence was a constant invitation. One night, after a grueling session, Noah invited Elias to his place for dinner. "Just us," he said, and Elias couldn't say no. Noah's apartment was warm, filled with mismatched furniture and family photos. He cooked arroz con pollo, the spices filling the air, and they ate on the couch, knees touching. Elias felt at home, a feeling so foreign it scared him. After dinner, Noah put on a record, old-school jazz, and they talked until midnight about dreams, fears, the lives they wanted. When Noah leaned in, his lips brushing Elias's, it wasn't a question but an answer. The kiss was soft at first, then urgent, years of longing pouring out. Elias pulled back, breathless, his mind racing. "I've never," he started, but Noah's hand on his cheek stopped him. "It's okay," Noah whispered. "We'll figure it out together." They kissed again, and Elias let himself fall, the walls he'd built crumbling under Noah's touch. But the next morning, reality crashed in. Elias woke to a voicemail from his father, his voice heavy. "Your mom's sick, Elias. You need to come home." The words were a knife, cutting through the fragile hope he'd found. He looked at Noah, still asleep, and felt the weight of two worlds pulling him apart. Elias boarded the plane to Georgia with a knot in his stomach, Noah's kiss still burning on his lips. He hadn't told Noah about the trip, hadn't known how to explain the panic that gripped him. His mother's illness, lung cancer, his father said, was a call he couldn't ignore, but it meant stepping back into a world that didn't know the real him. Savannah was humid, the air thick with memories. His parents' house hadn't changed. The same creaky porch, the same Bible on the coffee table. His mother, frail but smiling, hugged him tightly. "My boy," she whispered, and Elias's throat tightened. His father was quieter, his eyes searching Elias for something he couldn't name. Amara was there too, her presence a lifeline. She pulled him aside that night, her voice low. "You're different, Eli. What's changed?" He wanted to tell her about Noah, about the kiss that had rewritten his world, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he helped his mother, cooked meals, sat through his father's sermons at church. Each day he felt the old Elias resurface, the one who nodded, smiled, hid. He texted Noah sparingly, afraid to let Seattle's freedom bleed into Georgia's judgment. Noah's messages were patient but tinged with worry. "Miss you at the gym. Everything okay?" Elias replied with half-truths, unable to bridge the gap between his worlds. One night, alone in his childhood bedroom, he pulled out his sketchbook, drawing Noah's face from memory. The act was a rebellion, a claim to the truth he couldn't speak. Back in Seattle, Elias found Noah waiting at the airport, his smile hesitant but warm. They drove in silence, the city's lights blurring past. At Noah's apartment, Elias broke. "My mom's sick," he said, tears falling, "and I'm terrified of losing her, of losing this." He gestured between them, the weight of his confession heavy. Noah pulled him close, his arms a sanctuary. "You won't lose me," he said, "but you have to choose who you want to be." The next weeks were a blur of gym sessions and hospital updates. Elias threw himself into his art, designing a mural for the Queer Center's fundraiser. It was bold, two figures under cherry blossoms, hands touching, a celebration of love and courage. Noah helped, his presence steadying Elias's shaking hands. The night of the unveiling, the center was packed, and Elias felt exposed, his heart on display. Maya, the trans woman from the dance, hugged him fiercely. "This is you, isn't it?" she said, pointing at the mural. Elias nodded, his eyes finding Noah's across the room. But the high was short-lived. A call from Amara brought news. Their mother's condition was worsening. Elias booked another flight, this time telling Noah everything. "Come with me," Elias said, the words a leap. Noah hesitated, then nodded. "If you need me, I'm there." In Georgia, Noah was a stranger in a strange land. Elias's father was polite but distant, his mother warm but weak. Amara, sensing the truth, cornered Elias one night. "You love him," she said, not a question. Elias nodded, tears in his eyes. "Then don't let fear win," she said, her voice fierce. "Mom would want you to be happy." The hospital was sterile, the beeping machines a cruel reminder of time slipping away. Elias sat by his mother's bed, holding her hand, Noah a quiet presence beside him. "You look lighter," his mother said, her voice faint. "What's his name?" Elias's heart stopped, but her smile was soft, knowing. "Noah," he whispered, and she squeezed his hand. "Be brave, my boy." Elias's mother passed 2 weeks later, her hand in his, Noah by his side. The funeral was a blur of grief and Southern tradition, but Amara's support and Noah's quiet strength kept Elias afloat. His father remained distant, but as they stood by the grave, he placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. She loved you, he said, his voice rough. It wasn't acceptance, but it was a start. Back in Seattle, Elias felt unmoored, grief and love tangled in his chest. He and Noah moved slowly, rebuilding their rhythm. The gym became their sanctuary again, each lift a step toward healing. Elias's mural at the Queer Center became a local legend, drawing crowds who saw their own stories in its lines. He started sketching again, not just Noah but himself, unafraid, whole. One evening, under the same cherry trees where it all began, Elias took Noah's hand. "I'm ready," he said, his voice steady. "To be us. To be me." Noah's smile was a sunrise, and when they kissed, it was a promise. Elias wasn't naive. There would be challenges, family tensions, moments of doubt, but for the first time he believed he could face them. They moved in together that summer, their apartment a canvas of art and memories. Elias's father called sometimes, his questions tentative but curious. Amara visited, her laughter filling their home. At the gym, Elias spotted Noah's lifts, their hands brushing with purpose now, no longer accidental. Each touch was a reminder. Love was worth the fight. Elias's sketchbooks filled with new dreams, portraits of them, of a future where fear didn't win. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. And as he stood behind Noah at the bench press, counting reps under the gym's humming lights, he knew he'd never pretend again. Love, like lifting, was about showing up, pushing through and holding on no matter the weight.